Hello, everyone. I'm Graham Ledger, and welcome to the Daily Ledger. Our cover story, the liberal left assault on the Bill of Rights, personified by Barack Obama. The president's attack on the Second Amendment is drawing constitutional fire, but it is also already backfiring. More on that in a moment. In short, the president's unconstitutional executive actions look like this. Mandatory smart gun technology potentially making virtually every existing gun in the U.S. right now illegal. Expanding the definition of a licensed gun dealer, including anyone who sells a firearm. Hundreds of new FBI examiners to process the increased paperwork, all the red tape, and in the end, a backdoor national firearm registry to keep track of you. Now, this plan is exactly what the framers of the Constitution were trying to prevent. A federal government that is now dictating which of our God-given rights it deems worthy.
And the constant excuses for inaction no longer do, no longer suffice. That's why we're here today. Not to debate the last mass shooting, but to do something to try to prevent the next one.
It would be so much better if the president would work with Congress to come up with legislation that strengthened the background checks.
What he's trying to do is to criminalize something that hadn't been criminalized before, that is private gun sales. The statute that's in place right now does not cover those sales. Now, if he wants to cover those with background checks, then you go through the Congress, we pass the law, it comes to his desk, and he signs it. He can't act unilaterally. Whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, he can't do that.
He can't, but he did. So is that it from the opposition party, the Republicans? Is that all they've got? If Obama is overstepping his constitutional authority, which he is, then why isn't the Congress stopping him constitutionally? But the irony is his plan will not save lives. Instead, it will imperil the lives of good Americans who simply wish to exercise their right to keep and bear arms, but can't because of the 44th president. Joining me now from Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center and gun rights advocate John Lott. John, I have a simple question for you. The president's plan, how's that going to save lives?
Well, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to save lives. In fact, I wish some of the people who are criticizing it would point out that it's going to endanger lives. Look, he talked many times yesterday about mass public shootings. He had tears coming down from his eyes when he was talking about the horrible tragedy at Sandy Hook there. But the thing is, these expanded background checks, so-called expanded background checks, wouldn't have stopped a single one of the mass public shootings that the president has talked about during his administration, nor any of them, nor during the Bush administration. And, you have this strange situation where you have the San Bernardino attack, for example, that he talked about, taking place in a state that already has the laws that he wants to have in terms of background checks. And yet the tragedy occurs there. And he uses the fact that the tragedy occurred in a state that already has these laws to somehow push for other states adopting the laws. What will happen, though, is they'll make it more costly for people to get guns. You look at Washington, D.C., where he was speaking from. It costs $125 to transfer a gun in Washington, D.C. That may not stop you or I from being able to get a gun, but people who my research indicates benefit the most from having a gun, law-abiding, poor blacks who live in high-crime urban areas, the people are the most vulnerable victims of crime. $125 might make the difference between whether or not they can afford a gun for protecting themselves or their families.
You bring up Sandy Hook, if I remember right, the crazy person there took firearms from his mother. San Bernardino, we had this crazy person getting them for the terrorists and giving them to them. And Fort Hood, if I remember right, the Sergeant Nadal used a government issue firearm to commit that act. So none of these major events that have taken place under Barack Obama would have been stopped. Here's the way I look at it, John. This is going to dissuade people from entering into any kind of transaction. They're going to be confused. They're going to be worried. I'm not going to be able to, for example, give or sell a firearm to my daughter. And that's what he wants here. He wants to basically bring this process to a standstill.
Right. Well, I think you're probably right that if you worry that you may face criminal penalties for transferring a gun, I mean, there's a whole set of complicated rules that he wants to impose there. Look, the current law is very clear. It says that you only have to get a firearms dealer's license if your principal business, either in terms of activity or in terms of profits, is derived from you repeatedly selling guns. There's also provisions in there to protect people who are collectors or hobbyists with regard to guns. How can you say it's your principal business if Obama wants to go and have a regulation that says that you sell one gun within a certain period of time, like 4 or 5 months, that means that you're a dealer then?
Let's look at the other side of this, John. Constitutional ways to reduce illegal gun violence. That would be bad guys committing crimes with firearms, right? In my opinion, you can expand on this. In my opinion, it would be getting rid of gun-free zones and allowing Americans to conceal carry more or open carry, for that matter. Why in the world should it be legal for a local sheriff to deny me or any other American the right to bear arms in public, whether concealed or not? Why should one man or woman have that power to deny my Second Amendment rights?
Right. Well, I mean, the point that you're making, I think, is an excellent one. And that is, if you look at these mass public shootings, not only in the United States, but the large number that they've had in Europe, the one common feature has been that they keep on occurring time after time in places where victims aren't allowed to go and defend themselves. And, people can see this on our website at crimeresearch.org, but go through a lot of cases where you find these killers consciously think about whether or not the victims in particular venues are going to be able to go and defend themselves. They go and pick places where they believe victims can't defend themselves because they know that it'll be easier for them to go and kill more people and to go and get more media attention the more people that they kill. But, it's the president, when he's spoken out on this, has said, well, he doesn't understand. We already have 300 million guns. Why do people go and talk about getting more guns? The issue isn't the number of guns. It's where people are allowed to have guns for protection. When you ban guns in certain places, the good law-abiding citizens who obey those rules, not the criminals. And rather than making it safer for victims, you unintentionally make it safer for criminals and easier for them to commit their attacks.
When we zoom out and we look at the big picture here, John, this is part of an incremental attack on the Bill of Rights, but specifically the Second Amendment. When you look at ATF trying to ban certain kinds of ammo, if you don't have ammo for a firearm, guess what? It becomes a paperweight. We have the CCW, the sheriff's not allowing the CCWs. Many states obviously not allowing open carry. There are now this Obama attack on the Second Amendment. This is how our constitutional rights get eroded over time, is it not?
Look, I'm not really into constitutional issues. To me, the issue is one of safety. You identified me as an advocate. To me, what I try to advocate are the policies that are going to make people safer over time. And what you find is that when you restrict people having guns, such as bans that we've seen in Washington, D.C. and Chicago, or bans in any other country, murder rates every single time has gone up.
Right.
And the problem that you face is that it's the most law-abiding good citizens who obey these laws, not the criminals. And whether it's a ban or other types of regulations, you have to make sure that you're not primarily disarming the victims and not the criminals. And unfortunately, the types of rules that the president's pushing forward have that effect. You go and make it so it's $125 in D.C. to go and transfer a firearm. Well, who obeys that? It's a law-abiding good citizen who's going to do that, not the gangs on the street. They're not the ones who are paying the additional $25 in order to transfer a gun.
It ain't the bad guy, that's for sure. And the irony of all of this is that Barack Obama is being called the biggest and the best gun salesman there is, because right now, because of Barack Obama, last year and now going into the new year, gun sales are absolutely going through the roof, and good for Americans for exercising their Second Amendment right. John, thank you. Coming up next, the big message behind the anti-big government protest in Oregon. Also ahead, the weak and deadly Obama military strategy fatally exposed.
Afghanistan is a dangerous place, and that our men and women in uniform who continue to serve our country there are putting themselves at risk for our own national security.